By the fall of 1943, the tide was turning, and the Allies were moving from just defending their convoys to taking the fight to the U-boats themselves. But hunting U-boats across millions of square miles of ocean was a daunting and dangerous task.
Most shipwrecks are museums, but some are horror stories. Divers just found the German U-boat U-405. They were ready for a wreck, but not for this. The scene they found was frankly terrifying. It shows the U-boat wasn't just torpedoed, it was hit, then rammed, and then its crew fought a deck-to-deck battle with an American destroyer. The mangled steel tells a story that many historians thought was just a tall tale. What they found in the deep proves it wasn't. The tomb in the dark. The deep ocean is the most hostile place on our planet. It is a world of total darkness, crushing pressure, and freezing cold. It is a place that does not want visitors. Floating on the surface of the North Atlantic, miles from any land, a high-tech research vessel, let's call it the Odyssey, holds its position against the rolling waves. Its mission, to find a ghost. Inside the warm, bright control room, a team of oceanographers and wreck hunters huddles around a bank of screens. They are monitoring Hercules, their remotely operated vehicle, or ROV. Hercules is a masterpiece of engineering, a multi-million-dollar robot the size of a small car. It is tethered to the Odyssey by a thick cable, and it is their eyes and ears in the abyss 2 miles straight down. The ROV descends. On its screen, the water goes from blue to deep blue to gray, and finally to pure, unchanging black. The only light is from the ROV's own powerful beams, cutting a small cone into an endless night. The pressure down here is over 3,000 pounds per square inch. It's enough to flatten a truck. But Hercules is built for this. It glides silently over the seabed, a vast, empty plain of mud. For hours it's the same. Mud and the occasional strange-looking deep-sea creature. Then the sonar operator speaks. "I've got something. A hard contact. Bearing 030 range, 500 yards. The team tenses. The ROV pilot nudges his controls. Hercules floats over the mud. 400 yards, 300. The sonar paints a picture. A long, thin object, man-made, just sitting on the seabed. I think this is it," the pilot says. Then a shape emerges in the lights. At first it's just a shadow, then steel. Rusted, dark, and covered in 80 years of ocean life. It's a submarine. The conning tower, the long curved deck, it's a German-type 7C U-boat. They found it, U-405. But the initial excitement dies in their throats. As the pilot brings Hercules in for a closer look, the scene is, to put it mildly, terrifying. This isn't a clean wreck. This isn't a sub that took a torpedo and sank. The entire vessel looks brutalized. The pilot guides the ROV along the hull. There's a massive gaping wound in its side, a horrific gash of torn, shredded steel as if a giant can opener ripped it apart. This wasn't from an explosion, this was an impact. What did this?" one of the technicians whispers. The pilot swings Hercules up and over the conning tower, the U-boat's command center. The team leans in. The metal is riddled with holes, dozens of them. They aren't big holes from a cannon, they look like bullet holes, hundreds of them. The ROV's lights catch something else, a thin, sharp object stuck right in the wooden decking near the tower. The pilot zooms in, the team stares in disbelief. It looks so like a knife. What happened here? What the divers were looking at was not a normal naval engagement. It was the physical proof, the frozen crime scene of one of the most savage and desperate fights of the Second World War. A fight that should have been impossible. This wreck told a story of pure primal rage. The gray wolves of the Atlantic. To understand what the divers found, you have to understand the North Atlantic in 1943. It was the single most important battlefield of the war. You see, Great Britain was an island. It could not feed itself or fuel its war machine. Everything, food, fuel, tanks, planes, bullets, and men, had to come from North America, and it all had to cross the Atlantic. The Germans knew this, and they had the perfect weapon to sever this lifeline, the Unterseeboot, the U-boat. These gray wolves, as they were called, hunted in groups known as wolf packs. They would stalk the massive, slow-moving convoys of cargo ships and pick them off one by one. This wasn't a war of glorious battles, it was a tonnage war, a grim mathematical equation. Could the Allies build ships faster than the Germans could sink them? For a long time, the answer was no. Many people are crazy about the stories of fighter planes and tank battles, but the thing nobody tells you is that the war was almost lost right here in the freezing, empty ocean. There was a section of the mid-Atlantic nicknamed the Black Pit, or the Air Gap. It was a stretch of ocean hundreds of miles wide that was too far from America and too far from Britain for air cover. The convoys were alone, and this is where the wolf packs feasted. It was a terrifying existence. For the merchant sailors, every night brought the threat of a bang and a rush of icy water. For the U-boat crews, it was a life of cramped, foul-smelling tension punctuated by the terrifying ping. Ping. Ping of a destroyer's sonar. By 1943, the tide was just beginning to turn. The Allies were getting better. They had new ships, new tactics, and a new game-changing technology: radar. Radar could spot a surfaced U-boat from miles away, even in total darkness. And that's where our story begins. In the middle of the Black Pit, in the middle of a raging storm, on the night of November 1st, 1943. Two ships, one a Predator, one a Protector, were heading straight for each other. One was a high-tech German hunter. The other was a museum piece. A World War I ship was about to fight a modern monster. Another time. Two captains. Let's meet the combatants. First, the hunter, U-405. This was a Type 7C U-boat. If you picture a German submarine from the movies, this is what you're seeing. Over 560 of these were built. They were the workhorses of the German fleet. At nearly 220 feet long, they were not large. Inside, they were frankly disgusting. 45 to 50 men lived crammed into a steel tube. The air was thick with the smell of diesel, moldy bread, and unwashed bodies. Men on long patrols didn't shower for months. They hot bunked, meaning as soon as one man finished his shift, another man, still warm and sweaty, would climb into the same bunk. But it was a deadly machine. It carried 14 torpedoes, and its 88mm deck gun was powerful. In command was Korvettenkapitan Rolf Heinrich Hauptmann. He was a veteran. He knew his boat, he knew the Atlantic, and he was dangerous. His boat was a high-tech Predator, a wolf. Now, let's meet the sheepdog, the USS Bory. And get this, the Bory was an antique. It was a Clemson-class destroyer, a four-piper. It was built in 1919. It was a leftover from World War I. By 1943, this ship was completely obsolete. It was designed before sonar was a main tool and long before radar was even invented. Its hull was thin, its top speed was fading. In a modern war, it was, to put it mildly, outmatched. So what was it doing here? The answer is desperation. The Allies needed any ship that could float and carry depth charges. The Bory was one of dozens of these old destroyers pulled out of mothballs to protect the convoys. What it lacked in technology, it made up for in spirit. Its commander was 30-year-old Lieutenant Charles Harris Hutchins. Hutchins was young, but he was a brawler. He hated U-boats, and he was willing to do anything to stop them. So you have the setting, a black, stormy night. You have the duelists, a high-tech modern submarine versus an ancient relic of a destroyer. The U-405 and the USS Bory were on a collision course. What happened next would become one of the most bizarre and brutal legends of the sea. The stage was set for an impossible battle. The electronic scream, contact lost. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. The USS Bory is crashing through the storm. The wind is howling and 15-foot waves are breaking over the bow. It's impossible to see more than a few yards. Inside the Bory's dark combat room, a young radar operator is staring at the green glow of his screen. This new technology was their only advantage. Suddenly, a tiny speck of light appears. Blip. Contact. 8,000 yards away at 170. Hutchins is instantly alert. In this weather, at this time of night, that is only one thing: a U-boat. It must be on the surface. Hutchins gives the order. Turn 170. Flank speed. The Bory's old, tired engines scream. The whole ship vibrates and shakes as it pushes to its absolute limit, pounding through the heavy seas, closing the gap. 6,000 yards, the radar man calls. 4,000. Now let's go 5 miles away to the U-405. It's on the surface, just as Hutchins guessed. But why? This is the great weakness of U-boats. Their diesel engines were fantastic, but they needed air. And those engines were the only way to recharge the giant batteries that ran the sub underwater. Hopman was using the cover of the storm to get a fresh charge. He was blind, but he wasn't deaf. Deep in the U-boat's control room, a hydrophone operator has his headphones clamped on. His job is to listen. He hears the storm, and then he hears something else. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It's faint at first, then stronger. Propellers. High-speed ship bearing 90. Hopman knows no friendly ship is out here. It's a destroyer, and it's coming right for them. He screams the order, "Alarm! Prepare to dive! All crew to battle stations!" The klaxon horn blares. Men scramble through the narrow hatches. They spin the wheels to open the vents, and the sub begins to flood its ballast tanks, pulling it under the waves. Back on the Bory, the radar man calls out, 2,000 bearing 265, yum. Hutchins is on the bridge, staring into the blackness, seeing nothing. 1,000 yards, and then, "Contact has been lost, sir." The blip is gone. A chill runs down Hutchins' spine. The U-boat has dived. It has vanished. And that means one terrible thing. The Germans know they're here. The hunter has just become the hunted. The U-boat was now silent, and it was ready to strike. The duel is on. Hutchins immediately orders half speed. The Bory's engines quiet down. The game has changed. Radar is now useless. It's a game of sound. The Bory's sonar operator takes over. He sends out a pulse of sound. Ping! The sound travels through the water, and the operator listens for the echo. Ping! Nothing. Ping! Nothing. Inside U-405, the crew is silent. They can hear it. The ping is the sound of a fingernail tapping on their steel coffin. Then the sonar man on the Bory hears it. A faint echo. Ping! Sonar contact 2,000 yards bearing 170. Hutchins orders the ship to turn. He's on them. Inside the U-boat, Hopman is a master of this game. He hears the pings getting louder. He's twisting and turning, trying to evade. He has a plan. He needs to get under the Bory, into its baffles. This is the blind spot, the noisy area right behind the destroyer's own propellers, where the sonar can't hear him. If he can get there, he's safe, and he can line up a torpedo. On the Bory, the sonar man is calling out the ranges, his voice tense. Contact drifting into range. 1,000 yards. 800, 600 exclamation mark. Hutchins gives the command. Prepare port launchers for depth charges. Men on the stormy wet deck wrestle with the ash cans. These are giant barrels of explosives, 300 pounds each. They don't need a direct hit. The pressure wave alone can crush a sub. Contact has been lost, sir. The U-boat did it. It's under them, but Hutchins is fast. 500 yards, now bearing starboard, drawing fast. The sub is in the baffles, making its move. Full to starboard, Hutchins yells. He swings the ship hard. This does two things. It turns the ship to follow the sub, and it swings the stern, where the depth charges are, right over the U-boat's last known position. 300 yards. Fire! The charges launch with a thunk-thunk flying into the black water. A few seconds pass. The crew holds its breath. The ocean erupts. Two massive pillars of water shoot into the air. The Bory is rocked by the blast. Deep underwater, U-405 is hit. The shockwave slams into it like a hammer. Lights shatter. Men are thrown. A report comes from the front of the sub. Flooding in the bow, sir. We can't stop it. At this depth, the water pressure is a monster. The flooding is unstoppable. They are going to be crushed. Hopman has only one choice. One desperate last-ditch gamble. Surface! Surface! Man the guns! The sub was coming up and all hell was about to break loose. Stand by for a ram. The men on the USS Bory are looking back at the boiling water from their own depth charges. And then they see it. A massive black shape bursts from the waves. It's the U-405. It's wounded, but it's fighting, and it's right on their stern. It surfaced on our stern, a lookout screams. Turn on the searchlight, Hutchins yells. A massive bright white beam cuts through the storm and locks onto the submarine. The sight is terrifying. Dozens of German sailors are pouring out of the hatches. They are battling the waves washing over their own deck, scrambling to man their 20mm anti-aircraft guns. The guns open up. Thump, thump, thump! Red tracer shells streak across the few hundred yards of water and slam into the Bore's hull and superstructure. American sailors dive for cover. On the U-boat, the German sailors are totally exposed. The Bore's spotlight is on them, but they are also trying to reach their big gun, the 88mm cannon on the deck. If they can load and fire that one time, they can put a shell right into the Bore's bridge. This fight could be over. Hutchins knows this. He acts instantly. All guns, local control, pointer fire. The Bore's own guns, its old 4-inchers and smaller cannons, roar to life. The first shots fly wild in the storm, but the range is almost zero. The American gunners find their mark. Shells crash into the U-405's forecastle. The German gun crews are devastated. Brave men try to take their place, but they are neutralized. A shell hits the 88mm gun directly. When the smoke clears, the gun and its crew are gone. But the U-boat, incredibly, is still afloat. It's still moving. Hutchins is pumped full of adrenaline. His guns aren't sinking it fast enough. He needs to end this. Now. He makes a decision that no naval officer is trained for, a decision from the age of wooden ships. He yells to the helmsman, "Ram it!" The crew hears the order over the ship's loudspeaker. "Stand by for a ram. Stand by for a ram." All hands brace for impact. The old destroyer, its engine screaming, barrels down on the U-boat. The sound is horrifying, a catastrophic screech of tearing metal. The Bore's thin World War I bow plows directly into the side of the U-405. But it doesn't cut it in two. Instead, the Bore rides up onto the submarine's deck. The two ships are stuck. They are locked together, grinding and smashing against each other in the 15-foot waves. And what happens next is what the divers found. The Americans on the Bore's deck are now looking down at the Germans on the U-boat's deck. The range is 10 feet. A savage medieval firefight breaks out. The Americans have Tommy guns, pistols, and rifles. They pour a storm of fire down onto the trapped Germans. The Germans fight back, but they have no cover. It's a massacre. But the Americans are in a frenzy. They start throwing anything they can find. They are firing flare pistols at the Germans. They are throwing empty, heavy shell casings. One sailor, having emptied his gun, sees a German sailor aiming at his friend. He grabs the only thing he has, a kitchen knife from his belt. He throws it across the gap and it sticks, thwack, into the U-boat's deck. This is the knife the divers found. The two ships were locked in a fight to the end. A victory at sea. The two ships are both dying. Inside the Bore, Chief Engineer Kenneth Miles Lucas reports massive flooding. The ramming has buckled their bow. They are sinking. Inside U-405, Hopman knows it's over, but he will fight to the last. He orders, "Full back, hard to port." The U-boat's engines deep underwater scream. With a terrible sound of tearing metal, the U-405 rips itself free from the Bore's grip. It's free, but it's mortally wounded. The Bore's gunners keep firing. They even fire a torpedo. It misses. But Hopman, in a final act of defiance, turns his wounded sub. He's going to try to fire his own torpedoes. Hutchins sees the maneuver. He has one last brilliant idea. Disable the searchlight! The entire scene is plunged into total darkness. Hopman on the U-boat's bridge is confused. He's lost his target. This is his only chance to escape. He aborts the torpedo run and orders a turn to starboard, trying to slip away into the storm. But the Bore's radar never lost him. Hutchins's plan worked. Enable the searchlight. The light flashes back on and the U-boat is caught right in front of them, a perfect target. Hard to starboard. Hutchins swings his stern around. Fire depth charges. At point-blank range, the Bore drops its last charges right on top of the submarine. The explosions are devastating. They lift the U-boat out of the water. Its hull is breached beyond repair. It's over. A few moments later, flares shoot up from the U-boat. It's the signal to surrender. About 15 survivors, including Hopman, climb out and into life rafts. The Bore inches closer, its own crew readying ropes. But then, "Flare astern, us!" a lookout yells. "Torpedo in the water!" It's another U-boat. Or so they think. Hutchins has to save his ship. He orders an emergency turn. The Bore swings and plows directly through the German life rafts. In the chaos of the storm, all 15 German survivors are lost to the Atlantic. The Bory won, but it was a victory no one could celebrate. The ship was sinking. The flooding could not be stopped. The crew had to abandon ship. Tragically, in the high seas, 27 of the Bory's own men were lost before rescue ships arrived. The Bory itself, a valiant old warrior, was finished off the next day. And now, 80 years later, the divers from the Odyssey are staring at the proof. The thing is, this story was always told, but many people thought it was a tall tale. A kitchen knife? Ramming a U-boat? It sounded too crazy to be true, but the divers saw the truth. The terrifying sight wasn't a monster, it was the proof of human desperation. The massive torn gash from the ram, the hundreds of small holes in the conning tower from the Tommy guns, and the knife still stuck in the deck. The ocean doesn't keep secrets forever. The ghosts that won't die. The discovery of the U-405 wreck solves one mystery. It proves the story of the ramming, the knife, and the medieval battle was all horrifyingly true. The ocean, it seems, gave up its ghost. But what if it didn't? What if the discovery of this wreck isn't the end of the story? What if the truth we all just learned is actually a carefully constructed screen designed to hide a much darker and stranger set of secrets? The wreck answers what happened, but it doesn't answer why. And that's where the story gets really weird. The official history is full of holes. And when you look into those holes, a new, wilder story emerges. A story of phantom torpedoes, a brutal cover-up, and a cargo so secret it was worth dying for. Let's start with the moment that sealed the fate of the German sailors. Do you remember? The Bory had won. The U-boat was sinking. The German survivors were in their life rafts waiting for rescue. Then a lookout screams, "Torpedo in the water!" The Bory, itself mortally wounded, has to make an emergency turn to save itself. In that turn, it plows through the life rafts, eliminating all the survivors. A tragic accident, right? But what if it wasn't a torpedo? Think about it. The Bory's crew had just been through the most traumatic, brutal fight of their lives. They were pumped full of adrenaline, watching their own ship flood in the middle of a pitch-black, raging storm. They were seeing phantoms in the dark. The flare they reported seeing could have been anything. A rogue wave breaking in the dark can look just like the wake of a torpedo. The sonar operator, his ears ringing from the depth charges and the grinding crash of the ram, could have easily misinterpreted a ghost signal. There may have been no other U-boat at all. But here's a wilder theory. Just minutes before, the Bory had fired its own torpedo, and it missed. Now, American torpedoes from that era were notoriously flawed. They were infamous for a terrifying defect. They could malfunction, lose their guidance, and start a circular run. That's right, the torpedo could literally turn around and come back to hunt its own launcher. Was the torpedo the Bory was dodging itself? We will never know. But that one phantom signal is the entire reason the German survivors were run down. An accident, caused by panic or a freak malfunction. But this leads to the second, darker theory. What if the story of the battle was intentionally buried? For 80 years, this entire event was dismissed as a tall tale. Why? Was it really that hard to believe, or was the United States Navy embarrassed by it? Let's look at the facts. Lieutenant Hutchins was a brawler, not a textbook officer. He made a decision from the 1800s. He rammed a U-boat. In the cold, hard math of the tonnage war, this was a terrible trade. He had swapped one obsolete World War I era destroyer for one German U-boat. On paper, that's not a terrible trade, but here's the catch: the Bory was lost. Hutchins sank his own ship. You don't get medals for that. But the ramming isn't even the worst part. It's what happened in those 10 minutes when the ships were locked together. This wasn't a naval engagement, it was a massacre. The Americans, from the high deck of their destroyer, poured down a storm of lead from Tommy guns onto a trapped, exposed German crew. They were throwing flares, heavy shell casings, and yes, kitchen knives. It was primal. It was savage. And then, to top it all off, the Bory ran over the survivors. Now put yourself in the shoes of a Navy public relations officer in 1943. You're trying to sell the war to the public back home. You want heroes. You want clean victories. You do not want this story. You can't print a story that says our boys bravely shot trapped men in a barrel, then ran over the rest. It's horrific. It's too close to a war crime. So what do? You classify the reports. You lose the after-action interviews. You give the crew strict orders not to talk about what really happened. You release a simple, clean statement. USS Bory engages and sinks U-boat. Bory is later lost to storm damage, and you let the real story, the story of the knife and the slaughter, fade into the realm of drunken sailor stories. The wreck proves what the Navy may have tried to bury for 80 years, that this victory was one of the most brutal and desperate acts of the entire war. This brings us to the wildest theory of all. It's the one question that still doesn't add up. Why did the U-boat fight back like that? Corvettan Kapitan Hopman was a veteran. He was a professional. He knew the rules of the game. When his U-boat was mortally wounded by the depth charges, he had one clear job: save his crew. The textbook move was to surface, scuttle the submarine, and get his men into the life rafts as fast as possible. Surrender. He did the opposite. He surfaced in the face of a destroyer and ordered his men to man the guns. He engaged in a surface battle he knew he could not win. He let his men get slaughtered on the deck. Why? Why would an experienced captain make such a crazy, desperate choice? Unless he wasn't just trying to save his boat, he was trying to protect his cargo. Think about it. U-boats were more than just weapons. They were high-priority transports. They were used to move the Third Reich's most valuable and secret items. We're talking gold plundered from conquered nations, top-secret documents, Enigma machines, or even new experimental technology. What if U-405 wasn't on a normal patrol? What if it was on a secret mission carrying something so valuable that Hopman was under strict orders never to let it be captured? This changes everything. This reframes the entire battle. Hopman didn't surface to fight, he surfaced to die. He was trying to draw the Bory's fire, to create a chaotic firefight, to buy himself just enough time to destroy his boat and his cargo completely. He was a man with a secret, willing to sacrifice himself and his entire crew to keep it. And this casts the new discovery in a very different light. The research vessel, the Odyssey. The public was told they were historians and wreck hunters. But were they? High-tech ROVs like Hercules are not cheap. These expeditions cost millions of dollars. Are we supposed to believe they spent that money just to see if a sailor really threw a knife? Or were they looking for something else? Did they have a different manifest? Were they, in fact, a modern-day treasure-hunting crew following rumors of a lost Nazi cargo? The discovery of the wreck might not be the end of the story. It might be the beginning of a cover-up for a much bigger prize. The ocean holds its secrets. The wreck of the U-405 is not just a museum, it's a crime scene, it's a treasure chest, and it's a ghost story that is still to this day unfolding. The divers found the knife, but we have to ask, what else did they find down there in the dark? Was this the most brutal, desperate naval fight in history, or just the one we happened to find? Let us know your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe because there are more ghosts in the deep.